Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for showing up. My name is Vince Palamara. I'm a 1984 graduate of Bethel Park, and got that? Okay. And this is a presentation I am doing on the Secret Service and the JFK assassination. And at the door it says, were the Secret Service, were they able to protect President Kennedy and prevent the assassination? And the very short answer to that is yes. And for decades, we've been tying ourselves up in knots, whether Oswald acted alone or if there was a conspiracy. It becomes like a parlor game that, quote unquote, we're never going to know. My personal opinion is that there was a conspiracy. Some of my research, some of my findings would lead one to believe, well, Vince, it sounds like some of this stuff is leaning more toward a conspiracy, but you can even just take the notion, let's just throw it all out. Oswald acted alone. Official history is correct in that regard. The sad truth is that if the Secret Service, which I do not denigrate as an organization, they're a fantastic organization, and let me just state for the record, even though a couple of these agents, I have a hard time sometimes believing that they were totally innocent of any wrongdoing other than gross negligence, I do not believe the Secret Service organization had anything to do with it. I mean, but I do think that they could have prevented the assassination, and this presentation is actually very timely because there's a book out now called The Kennedy Detail by Gerald, Blaine, former JFK-era agent I spoke to a couple of times, corresponded with. And quite frankly, with no delusions of grandeur, this book of his came out because I sent a 22-page letter to his very good friend, Clint Hill. Clint Hill being the agent that, in the famous Zapruder film, jumps onto the back of the car after the shooting, happens and, rescues Jackie and so on and so forth. I did something pretty bold in this letter. This letter was basically a Cliff Notes version of my research up to that point, because backtracking a little bit, making a long story very short in the interest of time, I contacted a lot of former agents, many of them that protected President Kennedy. And I didn't go into it with any hard and fast conclusions whether, there was a conspiracy or no conspiracy or they were negligent. I was just very fascinated with the Secret Service. And not to get into a digression, but everybody remembers the show The Wild Wild West. Okay, it was about the Secret Service of the 1860s, fictional, but it still was in the back of my mind that I had interested in the Secret Service, pretty, for lack of a better way to put it, neat organization. So when I started to get interested in John F. Kennedy, and as a side, like the assassination, I started to look at them. And when I went to my first conference in 1991, just as a guest, I was talking to people, and they're like, I wouldn't really pay attention to the Secret Service. I guess that's why the Secret Service is so secret, I was like, I got to do something about this. So I just started contacting these people. And this is before the internet even kicked in. September 27th, 1992 is like a day of living infamy with me, because the special agent in charge of the White House detail, Gerald, Behn, thank God I spoke to him because he passed away in April of '93. I was talking to him, just matter of fact, I said, I was reading William Manchester's book, Death of President, and Jim Bishop's book, The Day Kennedy Was Shot, and the Warren Report, and so on. And boy, since like President Kennedy, bless him, it was pretty difficult to protect. He ordered you guys off the car. He says, I don't remember Kennedy ever telling us to ordering us off the back of the car. If you look at the newsreel pictures, you'll see agents on there from time to time. I almost like, what? This is the #1 agent of Kennedy's detail? He wasn't like a buck private. He's like the Douglas MacArthur, so to speak. And I said, wait, let's time out. You need corroboration. Could just be one guy. He was very lucid, but somebody out there, using a defense attorney tactic, and said, oh, this one guy, where's the corroboration for this? So one after another, I contacted these guys either in writing, on the phone, so on and so forth, and with very rare exception, and even those exceptions aren't exceptions, as you'll see, they all said the same thing. He was a very nice man, never interfered with our actions at all. Oh, he never ordered us off the back of a car. That's hogwash. So I said, wait a minute, something's wrong here. There's these official reports that were given to the Warren Commission 6 months later, 5 months later, actually, saying, well, he did order us off the back of the car 4 days before, the major trip before Dallas, which was Tampa, Florida, which you'll see some of the footage on this I'm going to show you. By the way, I'm going to be showing a video of a little unique compilation of mine, and it's rare motorcade footage of other trips, rare WFAA footage from that day, black and white video, and some other things. And so when I started to compare the official record, the unofficial record, films and photos, All these guys, spoke to me and wrote to me. Total stranger on the phone. Many of these people believe Oswald acted alone. There's nothing to this stuff. Come on, why are you wasting my time? It was basically very begrudging. Yeah, because I'm a stranger on the phone. So I'm like a telemarketer. Yep. Yeah, of course, President Kennedy, yeah, he was a nice man. Never wants to do anything. So this leads us up to the present time. In between that time, I've been in a lot of other people's books. I was on the History Channel back in 2003. Well, what made Gerald Blaine write this book was when I was bold enough to send this letter to Clint Hill, it really ruffled their feathers. Because basically what it was laying out was, the good news is, Clint, it's a shame all these years you had this guilt. I'm really sorry to hear that you beat yourself up. You shouldn't have beat yourself up. Because if your supervisor didn't tell you to order you off the back of the car and create this mythology after the fact, well, then there wouldn't have been any excuse for you. Your hands were clean because you were told not to be there. They circled the wagons. They came out with this book, and in the interest of time, I can't really get into it. My online work is almost like a footnote to this presentation. You can check it out for yourself, but basically what it is he's trying to claim that the morning of JFK's funeral, there was a meeting with Chief Rowley, and before they went out to St. Matthew's Cathedral for the march with Jackie and the dignitaries like Haile Selassie and de Gaulle, they all got together and said, look, we know President Kennedy ordered us off the back of the car, but we can't make it look like President Kennedy was to blame for his own assassination, so cover this up. And that's what he's alleging in this book, that 47 years later, he's coming clean, and he doesn't name me by name. He calls me a self-described Secret Service expert, a little derogatory, but that's his prerogative, First Amendment. And that's what he's doing in this book. He's basically, him and his friend, it really blew their mind that someone was out there contacting these gentlemen, going against their code, so to speak. It's a free country. They didn't have to answer. It is what it is, so to speak, using the common vernacular. So getting up to the present time, I thought the better way to do this would be, it's one thing to stand up here and tell you my discoveries and so on and so forth, but I always like audio, visual to complement, just speaking, because I think that's the way to hammer home. There's that old saying, picture says 1,000 words. So we'll start this out, and what this is, I'll narrate it a little bit. It's about 35 minutes. It starts out with what I call a detailed intro. It starts out with the WFAA footage, and you'll notice something in particular about one of the agents from Love Field, Dallas Love Field. And it goes from there. And I have actually a couple audio excerpts of some of the actual agents that have now passed away, what they said to me. And don't want to give too much away because you'll see it for yourself. But one thing I will say, you will also see something that aired in December of 1997 on ABC with Peter Jennings. The then current Secret Service Director, Louis Moretti, came out and issued an order to all agents, former and current, to not speak about presidents' private lives and whatnot. This really ruffled a lot of feathers, what they had to say, and you'll see the anger they had towards President Kennedy's private life. Some people might say, they were upset at his private life. They're supposed to guard him. So use your imagination. But, well, here we go. We'll start this out.
Jackie. And here comes the President of the United States. Jackie down the stairs first, the President about 3 steps behind her. Mrs. Kennedy with a pink dress on, a wool dress, pillbox type hat, accepting the roses, and now the reception line forming at the President's plane, the ramp to it. Protocol usually has it that the President gets off the plane first and walks 3 or 4 paces ahead of his wife. But this has been changed around somewhat on this trip. People have noticed that the President has been allowing the First Lady to get off the plane first and walking 3 or 4 steps behind her. It's one thing about Mrs. Kennedy, there's no trouble at all spotting her with that bright pink dress. She stands out like a beacon light in this crowd. The limousine now is beginning to move, and the President and Mrs. Kennedy riding in the back seat. They are not using the bubble, so it'll be an open limousine parade, apparently through downtown Dallas. There goes the the first car, Secret Servicemen walking alongside of it. It's our understanding that the motorcade will be moving slowly enough so that everyone along the route will have a good look at the chief executive.
News footage was black and white then, but several amateur photographers caught the motorcade on color film. Channel 4 had 2 reporters along the route. Bob Huffaker was downtown.
In response to political staff, agents who usually surround the limousine were pulled away so people could see the president better. One reacted by throwing up his hands in disgust. 3 times he protested, what would prove to be a fatal error. Kennedy was killed by the 3rd shot from a sniper rifle, well after agents, if they had been nearby. Agents who usually surround the limousine were pulled away so people could see the president better. One reacted by throwing up his hands in disgust. 3 times he protested, what would prove to be a fatal error. Kennedy was killed by the 3rd shot from a sniper rifle, well after agents, if they had been nearby, could have pulled him.
So it'll be an open limousine parade, apparently through downtown Dallas. There goes the first car, Secret Servicemen walking alongside of it. It's our understanding that the motorcade will be moving slowly enough so that everyone along the route will have a good look at the chief executive.
News footage was black and white then, but several amateur photographers caught the motorcade on color film. Channel 4 had 2 reporters along the route. Bob Huffaker was downtown.
Right now, the crowds have completely filled all of the sidewalk space here in downtown Dallas, and they are packed from the buildings to the sidewalks. You can see anxious heads poked out of open windows in all of the downtown buildings here, all the way up to the topmost floors. By the way, any fear that demonstrations may have marred the presidential motorcade here in the downtown area, at this point, however, seems useless. Here comes the first car with Police Chief Jess Curry and Sheriff Bill Decker. And here is the President of the United States. And what a crowd, what a tremendous welcome he's getting now. And there's Jackie. She's getting just as big a welcome. And the crowd is absolutely going wild. This is a friendly crowd in downtown Dallas as the President and the First Lady pass by.
Huffaker signed off. Listeners were told the next live event was 30 minutes away, a luncheon at the Dallas Trade Mart. But moments later, gunfire in Dealey Plaza.
I heard 3 loud.
From his hometown of Duluth in Minnesota, one of those questioning critics of the official version of events is Professor James Fetzer.
The resurgence of interest in the death of JFK had repercussions when Congress passed the JFK Records Act in 1992 that created a 5 civilian-member board entrusted with the responsibility to review and declassify documents that were held by the CIA, the Secret Service, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and so forth. We know from its own report that it had some significant failures. For example, and the Secret Service, which deliberately destroyed motorcade records that would have revealed that the motorcade in Dallas was a travesty, a violation of at least 15 different Secret Service policies for presidential protection. This behavior on their part raises the most serious and disturbing questions about their complicity in the entire affair.
From the moment he arrived in Dallas, the president's protection was suspect, according to Vince Palamara, a Secret Service expert.
There was last-minute changes invoked by the Secret Service involving President Kennedy's security. Specifically, agents were told not to ride on or near the rear of the limousine. Now, these orders were funneled from the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the White House detail, who was the planner of the Texas trip, Floyd Boring, to one of his assistants, a shift leader by the name of Emory Roberts, who was in charge of the follow-up car. You can see an agent, Henry Rybka, doing his normal duty, jogging besides the limousine, when in the follow-up car, you can see Emory Roberts stand up and wave him back, and you can see a very perplexed Agent Rybka waving his arms in the air several times in seeming disgust. There was another last-minute change made at Love Field, invoked by the Secret Service. The Dallas Police Department motorcycle outriders were told not to be beside the car. It went from 4 to 6 down to a measly 2 riders on each side. And to add insult to injury, they were pushed further back in the motorcade by those agents not being by the car, by those motorcycle officers not being in their position. It opened up President Kennedy to a field of fire from in front and from the rear.
In the months before the trip to Texas, there had been a growing number of threats against the president's life.
Despite the increase in conspiratorial activity in the month of November 1963, in the apparent red alert the Secret Service appears to be under in response to this activity, the agency acts in the opposite fashion and actually reduces the security and acts like no threats on the president's life are occurring. Why?
Uniquely on that day in Dallas, the press, the camera crews, Kennedy's military aide, who would normally sit in the front of the president's car, and even his personal physician were all relegated to the rear of the motorcade by the Secret Service.
In a conventional motorcade, the president would be somewhere in the middle, surrounded by security and the press. In this case, the presidential limousine was set right out in front of every other limousine, which of course is the reason why the Secret Service destroyed the records of its own motorcades when they were asked for them by the Assassination Records Review Board.
The most suspicious behavior by shift leader Emory Roberts was to be at the time of the shooting in Dealey Plaza.
Tragically, he actually ordered the agents not to move during the heart of the shooting. Agent Sam Kinney, who drove the follow-up car, admitted as much to me and told me, quote, exactly right, end quote. And all these deficiencies begin and end with the Secret Service because they were the prime movers. They were the ones who were directing the security arrangements from Washington up to and including in the heart of Dallas during security meetings. They were the ones that gave out assignments, vetoed or approved of security arrangements, so the buck stops with them.
At Parkland Hospital after the president's death, the media were reporting that the fatal shots had come from in front of the presidential.
Getting ready to wave at the president. So
you were down under the viaduct, so to speak, weren't you?
Well, we were halfway in between
on the grass,
triple underpass. We were at the curb when the incident happened. But the president's car was some 50 feet still yet.
In front of you?
In front of us coming towards us, and we heard the first shot, and the president, I don't know who was hit first, but the president jumped up in his seat, and I thought it scared him. I thought it was a firecracker, because he looked, you know, fear. And then as the car got directly in front of us, well, a gunshot apparently from behind us hit the president in the side of the temple.
Do you think the first gunshot came from behind you, too?
I think it came from the same location. Apparently back up on the mall. I don't know what you call it.
For the benefit of nomenclature, all you folks have gone out under the viaduct, and as you turn, going under the viaduct on the left-hand side, there's some grass. Do you think the shot came from up on top of the viaduct toward the president? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Not on the viaduct itself, but up on top of the hill, a little mound of ground there, the garden.
How far away would you say that is from where the president was? A couple of 300 yards, something like that?
Well,
shooting took place today. Dallas is off to your left. This is Main Street. This is the county courthouse and the jailhouse in this block here. This is the triple underpass that we have referred to. This is where President Kennedy, Johnson, and as I understand it now, a Secret Service man was shot at about, Conley was shot at approximately 12:35 today. And from our eyewitness that you saw earlier, was shot from up in here. This is an overpass going over these streets. We call it our triple underpass because there's another one, was shot from here.
Was killed. The Secret Service agents normally walk directly beside the car on either side. We do not see any in this photograph, but usually 2 or 3 Secret Service agents will walk on either side of the car so that they are there to spot anyone who looks like a troublemaker. Government sources now confirm. We have this from Washington. Government sources now confirm. The Secret Service